Okay, we'll make a start. Can everyone hear me? Simon, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? Yep, great. My name's Craig Sinclair. I'm the response team leader for Emergency Management Southland. Welcome to this presentation this afternoon. Just to remind you that this session is being recorded so that you can go back and review it. And for those that have been invited and couldn't get here at this time, they can go back and have a look at it later on. I'll just start off with a short karakia. E te hui, whai te mataranga kia marama, kia whai taki ngā mahi katoa, tu maia, tu kaha, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou ia tātou katoa. For this gathering, seek knowledge for understanding, have purpose in all that we do, stand tall, be strong, let us show respect for each other. Thank you. Simon, I'll just get you to introduce yourself and explain why we're here today.
Thank you, Craig, and thanks for organising this event. And thanks, Georgina, for agreeing to be part of the event and give us an insight into your knowledge. We decided to get this event together because of last year, which resulted in those dry conditions, and it led to a series of actions. Those series of actions were completed with very tight timeframes, and at the time we were asked to brief the Mayoral Forum, and we had Georgina come in and brief the Mayoral Forum, which was exceptionally well received. But the one thing that stood out in both mine and Craig's mind was the fact that those dry conditions were actually predicted by MetService for quite some time beforehand. With that in mind, and being prepared for this year's events, with some indicators that we might be heading the same way, we thought it would be good to ask Georgina to come in and complete some forecasting for this year so that we can be as informed as we can be and start actions early should we need to. So once again, thank you, Craig, for organising it, and thank you, Georgina, for giving us your knowledge.
Okay, just some rules so this runs smoothly. So Georgina will give her presentation. If you've got any questions, rather than cutting in and asking, just put them in the chat, and at the end we'll get Georgina to go back and have a look at it and do that for us. George, welcome to the presentation, and thank you. I'll let you get on with it.
Great, I'm going to share. Unfortunately, I'm at home because I've been really sick, and it's not cool to be in the office when you're really sick at the moment. And then my neighbours have just got the tree trimmers right next door, so there'll be an annoying noise at times in the background. So sorry about that, it was not planned. Okay, right, I'm going to share the talk now. Can you see a blue screen? Okay, I can't see you guys anymore, so you'll have to orally.
Yes, we can. Thanks, George.
Cool. Orally stop me if I'm doing anything wrong. Okay, let's go. The purpose of this talk is, Craig just indicated, was to sort of inform you ahead of the summer season. I think it's a great opportunity for us to help you guys through what was looking like a third La Nina summer. Okay, so we'll start with where we are now, what we saw last year, and then we get going into the forecast. Alrighty. So just as a snapshot of soil moisture deficits nationally, we're sort of super soggy up here, more rain tonight and tomorrow. North Island is, basically hasn't seen a cessation of the easterlies, the wet easterlies up here. Starting to get pretty dry in the east of the South Island, also north of you guys in the Southern Lakes area. But Southland itself looking roughly, this is a little bit of an old zoom in now from Wednesday, whereas this is from today. We're currently sitting about 20 to 40 millimetres below soil saturation. What that tends to mean is that if you guys get 50 millimetres of rain in a burst over 6 hours or something, you might go on to watch, but really you've got a bit of room in those soils to work with. Okay, so that's how you kind of think about deficit or soil moisture deficit. So you're pretty well placed in a spring situation, not too wet, not too dry, basically. But going forward, we've got no rain today or tomorrow, of course. Got some minor features in the weekend. I can show you the actual weather if you like, but it doesn't bring too much totals. What we want to tend to do is get beyond the weather window and talk about the summer. That's what the focus of this talk is. And we've had La Nina for 2 years. This is a plot of the Nino 3.4 index. All that is a sea surface temperature in the central equatorial Pacific, so around the equator, bang smack in the middle of the Pacific. When the index is below about -1, depending on who you work for, that threshold can wiggle a wee bit, you're in La Nina territory. It needs to be sustained. And so there's the last 2 years. And interestingly, we're actually heading into, in fact, are already in, a third La Nina in a row, and that is pretty unusual. We have not seen that well, we've seen it only twice since 1900, since we had reliable measurements around this region. So third time lucky La Nina as we head through summer. So it's going to be an interesting late spring, early summer period under a third one in a row. So that's the wider framework that we're operating under in New Zealand. And of course, it's a global thing, so it's not just us. But the models, they've been fluffing around La Nina for a couple of years. We went neutral for a short period in winter, and as we're sort of fluffing around here, not particularly strong La Nina at the moment, but all the forecast models keep us in La Nina through to Feb, more or less Jan-Feb, and then they transition us as we come into this winter of 2023 into what we call the neutral zone. So the Pacific Ocean won't remain our primary driver. It'll be all Southern Ocean by then, I think. And then the million-dollar question, of course, is spring. It's really early days to think about what happens, but traditionally, if with a trajectory like that, you'd pop up into an El Nino for spring. So just giving you some sort of longer view. Okay, neutral winters post La Nina tend to be pretty wet over the North Island, sometimes Northern South Island, by the way. We've just been through one, very, very wet up here. And so we've got to remember that neutral doesn't mean nothing going on in the either your weather maps or your climate totals. Okay, they tend to be wet winters, especially for the north. For Southland, not so much. And of course, the big thing for you guys is the Southern Ocean weather system stuff coming out of the south. Now, this year, in fact, for the last 3 years, we've seen a predominance of what we call a positive SAM, or a Southern Ocean storminess. It's been less stormy. Anything up here in the red means quieter than normal from those southern fronts. We've had a couple of good episodes where you blew like anything, and southwest changes and snow and rain and everything like that from fronts moving out of the south recently as well. But generally, look at that persistence of quiet Southern Ocean. And that's been the flavour of the last 12 months. This plot's 12 months long, but also if you zoomed out to 3 years, you'd see that too. The coming fortnight, of course, this is a forecast index, and circled in blue, is also fairly quiet. And, you know, I'd have to say the next 4 weeks, so the remainder of November, looks quieter than normal in the Southern Ocean front. Well, I shouldn't use the word front because that's a Met word, but in the Southern Ocean aspect. And when you look at it from a long-term zoom-out view, this is a weather map when you take all of the weather maps from 1 September through to 4th November, and you just say, take away what's normal for climatology and what's left. And you see red colours are for high pressures compared to normal, higher than normal, and then blue's lower than normal. This is why Sydney's had its record wet year. Meanwhile, the ridges are all over southern New Zealand, eastern New Zealand. That's a very traditional Southern Ocean or quiet SAM regime. We've seen that so far in spring. That persistence of quiet Southern Ocean keeps on giving for you guys. Okay, and when you look at the rainfall accumulations over a year, this is just Queenstown. I'm just giving you a snapshot from January 1 to December 31st. The black line's the average. Green line last year. Okay, red line was earlier this year. Look, flatlining for 40 days. Basically no rain in March, which is when drought was declared about here. Record dry March for most of the south of the South Island, okay? But then we had some pretty healthy rain and snow for Queenstown over the winter period, where the slope is more steep than the average, as you're wetter than normal, and when it goes flat, which it has recently, somewhat quieter spells in spring. So that's Queenstown. Actual rain gauge. Okay, guys, here's Gore. We saw the same 40-day period of flatlining rain or nothing going on in March, and then we've seen some pretty standard, normal, healthy recharge during winter. And in Invercargill, what we have seen is the same record dry March, and then the recharge is tracked parallel to normal. Okay, so you've got your normal winter rainfall, but I'm guessing your hydrologists are telling you that, especially in the far south of your region, that the rainfall, the river flow and water tables are lower than they should be at this time, because your annual tally is quite down. There's still a gap there of about 200 millimetres or so. All right, and so for those of you who went here last year and got to see why I was not surprised we were in drought, these are the 4-week forecasts that are issued once a month from MetService. There's your October, November, December January, February, March totals. We didn't quite get March, the dryness in March right, by the way, guys. Own that one, but generally there was a trend to look wet in the north, yep, and dry in that southern area. Okay, and there's no surprises when you get 3 to 6 months of below normal rainfall that you end up in drought. Particularly that March was pretty extreme and not well forecast, to be honest. So far, what have we got out for the same period but roll 40 year? Our October rainfall was forecast to be below normal, so there was variation across the district, and our November rainfall is normal to below normal, so on the drier side. Okay, looking ahead to summer, I'm happy to talk about how we get these numbers at some point if you want, but generally we've come out of quite a cool spring period relative to what we call average. Nowadays it's pretty hard even to get near average, by the way, guys, on a baseline of warming, a 30-year average, but nevertheless we should see temperatures kick up a bit as we head into December, January and February, particularly in the far south. And look at that forecast nationally, so north to south, how wet it looks compared to normal in the north, and how dry compared to normal it is in the south. So generally we've got a pretty clear signal for continuing more highs than usual over a 3-month period over southern New Zealand, particularly Southland. This is for summer as a whole, December through February. Got a pretty clear prediction of above average temperatures, so we get some warmth injected into the system shortly. We've got really warm seas, guys, so that's pretty much a given. And we've got a drier than normal summer rainfall tally for Southland. So first of all, for the northern ones, if you are going camping in Coromandel, don't panic. A lot of the rain in the north will be boom or bust. So it'll be dry for 2 weeks, beautiful, you'll get your holiday in, bang, cyclone comes or something really nasty. You get a month's worth of rain in a couple of days. That's what that looks like to me up in the north, whereas you guys just look a little weaker in every front, maybe less fronts and more highs down there. What's not yet clear, just to be really honest, I did have a good think about this, is this summer shaping up to be as bad as last year? Now, what I would say is that my first initial gut reaction after 30 years of doing this was no, not as bad. But I think that we have to recognise it was the March that was the straw that broke the camel's back last year with no rain, just when you really needed it. So I think the big question, guys, will be what happens in early autumn, of course, for you. And we can, help update some of that 4-week and seasonal information a little bit closer to the time. But anyway, that's the same but different year forecast for you guys. So I'll break for questions.